commitment to early childhood education, commitment to workforce, a commitment to economic competitiveness. These are all the basic building blocks of Blueprint Mississippi that you hear us talk about all the time. And for an update on how the Blueprint process is proceeding and how we're raising funds to really get to this $10 million that we're spending over the next 5 years on implementing all of this, I'd like to introduce a person who came to Mississippi a couple of years ago from Texas. He is the CEO of Bancorp South, and he has taken the reins of this Blueprint project and is driving it with great success. Please join me in welcoming the CEO of Bancorp South, Dan Rollins. Dan?
Thank you, Blake. Blueprint Mississippi has become an important foundation for MEC. In fact, it is now a household word that assures the pathway to progress for our state. I'm happy to report that we have made tremendous progress on our fundraising, and we will report that the campaign is complete on target by the end of April. Coincidentally, April 30th also brings to close the first full year of this 5-year implementation program. Unlike most campaigns of this nature, we aggressively began our work before we launched our fundraising efforts. This was a gutsy move on the part of the MEC management team, who knew the recovering economy couldn't wait. We had to get going before we started our fundraising on the meaningful projects such as workforce, economic competitiveness, and infrastructure, and we did. Last year, right here in this meeting, MEC launched a new program called Mississippi Scholars Tech Masters. Brian Cusius of Ingalls Shipbuilding leads a team on some of our state's top CEOs in directing this project. Mississippi Scholars Tech Masters is encouraging students to take a career course of study. Those who do and achieve are recognized in a way they have never been honored before. Through this program, graduating seniors who have chosen a career course of study and who hit mileposts are honored in the same pomp and circumstance as those who achieve following the college prep courses. After all, isn't it about time we honored our future automakers, shipbuilders, and craftspeople the same way we honored those who want to become lawyers or CPAs or even bankers? The program has taken off like wildfire. We now have over 70 school districts on board, more than double the first-year goal, and more are coming online all the time. Way to go, Tech Masters. Now let's talk about getting around Mississippi. Joe Sanderson grows chickens, lots of them, but he needs good roads, strong ports, working railroads, and connected airports to do his business just like the rest of us. Joe is a can-do guy who, as we've already heard today, turned a golf event into real dollars for a great children's hospital. He's now taken the driver's seat for Blueprint's efforts for figuring out how to improve our state's aging infrastructure. He's managing a team of our state's best private sector leaders to develop a multi-year plan for doing that, just like he's done with the construction of new highways back in 1987. They are knee-deep in the process, which will result in an action strategy by the end of 2015. Way to go, Joe. And finally, there's a team putting heat and light on making sure Mississippi is the consistent winner in economic development in the South. MEC private sector leaders, economic developers who are members of the Mississippi Economic Development Council, along with Brent Christensen and his folks at MDA, are hunkered down and working on a playbook to win more projects and bring more jobs to Mississippi. MEC, MDA, MEDC right now are traversing the state, reaching out to 28 different communities to engage them in this process in a meaningful way, and there will be more next year, and the next, and the next. The more communities we get engaged, the more jobs we can get. And as our governor likes to say, economic development is a team sport. Way to go, team. So how much money have we raised to get this done? I'm proud to say that thanks to the help of so many in this room, we have already exceeded our initial fundraising goal of $3.7 million. That's great news, but we aren't celebrating just yet. We have a few more months to go and a few more dollars to raise before this is an ambitious 5-year program. It takes money to sustain 5 years of research, grassroots involvement, and action initiatives, and it has to last into 2019. Joining me in directing the fundraising campaign are 3 bankers, guys with a vested interest in the future of our great state, like me. Jerry Host from Trustmark, Robin McGraw from Renaissance, and John Hairston from Hancock Bank. Way to go, guys. We're doing a good job. Now we just need your help to get the rest of the way there. We need just over $4 million. And with those dollars, as Blake said, we'll add another $6 million in MEC operating funds over 5 years. By the middle of 2019, a total of over $10 million will have been pumped into getting the job done in our state. That's a real commitment to Mississippi's future. With the support of folks in this room and in communities across our state, we will cross the fundraising goal line on April 30th. Way to go, Mississippi. Thank you all very much.
I think there's 2 or 3 things. I think workforce development will be at the forefront. I think it's very important that we continue to work to make sure we have the type of workforce development, workforce training programs in place that's going to attract businesses to the state, but more importantly also help our existing businesses grow and expand and add jobs. The more we can do to make sure that we create an environment where job creation is number 1, that's the key.
What is the importance of business involvement in the legislative process?
Well, they need to know, the legislative process is like anything else. They need to hear from our business members, and that's what we do. We represent their thoughts to the legislators so that they can understand how important it is that we focus on these issues. It's going to help businesses grow, which ultimately creates those jobs that affect all people in Mississippi.
What does membership in MEC mean to the individual businesses?
Well, I think it means a lot. It gives them the opportunity to be able to be represented at the state capitol. It gives them a voice in what we're doing in Mississippi to improve our economic competitiveness. But it goes just for that. There's so many areas that we focus on. Again, the education side of it, technology, transportation, you name it. It's all part of what's important to make sure we're growing our economy in Mississippi.
We're going to talk about what we did last year and the things that are going on. For example, we started our online business filing last year. We got a business website coming, that kind of thing. Then we're going to talk about what we're going to do in the future, which is we're going to change the election for president to be the first Tuesday in March for 2016. So we'll have presidential candidates coming through Mississippi and answering our questions about how we think the country ought to be run. And we'll be talking about autism bill that's deeply needed in our state. 1 out of every 68 of our children now are born with autism, and how we address that is a real critical issue for families and children and economics as well. So we'll be talking about that a little bit. And we've got several different issues coming up. We got a busy agenda this year.
Tell us a little bit about your legislative agenda in this session.
Well, I think you'll hear the politics part of it will be the election for president, moving the date for election of president. Then you'll see this autism board, which is a health issue for children that are born with autism in Mississippi, and 1 out of every 68 now is born with autism. Getting them covered by insurance and treated will be very, very important to us. And Blue Cross Blue Shield's taking a lead in that, and we're working with them on that part of it. So you'll see a number of different positive things, I think, some pro-business things like partnerships and whatnot. It's kind of boring on occasion.
Tell us your reaction to today's event and the role that MEC plays in guiding business legislation.
Well, this is a critical thing for the state. They really are the driving engines of the economy. Will be here today. You'll see all of your manufacturers and business and sole proprietors and bankers and lawyers and such. They'll all be here, and people who set the economic policy for the state. And when they're healthy, our state's healthy. I have to remind the legislature every year that we own 5% by taxing of every business in Mississippi, and we don't have to put up any capital, and we don't have to hire any employees or fire any employees or worry about the factory burning down or anything else. We get 5% off the top. So we need to promote business in our state. That's how we generate our tax dollars. That's how our families get fed from people who work here. So it's really, really important, and these meetings set the tone, I think, for our next year.
Early childhood, workforce, economic development. These are the keys to moving this state forward. We can make a difference, and you can see the progress we're already making. And of course, also focusing on the kind of legislation and corporate focus we need to have to keep companies feeling good about being in Mississippi, about the tax laws, about the structure, and a lot of that falls under the role of our Secretary of State. We're very pleased to have with us a guy who has been a corporate attorney, somebody who understands what business needs, and somebody who has done a great job on helping keep Mississippi at the forefront from a corporate accountability and tax policy point of view. Please join me in welcoming the Secretary of State of Mississippi, and that's the Honorable Delbert Hosemann.
Visiting with kindergartens and seeing what makes them work. So I was in Warren County, my home county, and I went to the kindergarten class, and we were all sitting in there, and they were wonderful little children, these 4-year-old children. And so we were going to move back to their room. And the teacher got up and said, "Okay, everybody." And so she starts out the door, and all of them got in line, every single one of them, all 18 of them. So I followed them out, and I'm shuffling along and speaking to the teachers as I go by and everything. And the little girl at the end of it turned around and went, "Get in line." So I did. And we went through the place that people come to pick up their kids early, and there were several moms and dads in there. And so here comes all 18 of them, and a guy in a blue suit doing this. And one turned to the other and said, "I guess we don't have to worry about social promotion here. They've got a 60-year-old guy in kindergarten." This past year, you were the only state in the country to implement a voter ID without getting sued by anybody. And in November, 99.99% of you showed up without an ID. Every one of you had an ID. Every one of you did good, and I was out checking. I go from precinct to precinct, "How is it going?" And I went to the one downtown here, and I said, "How is it going?" And she was asking for IDs for every single one of them. And as she went through asking IDs, I said, "Is there any problems? Have you learned anything today? Anything going on?" And she said, "I did learn something today." And I said, "What is that?" She said, "I learned the governor's first name is Dewey." She carded the governor. That's a great thing. We did well. Y'all did very well. We are now, after January the 1st, the only state in the country that is fully electronically where you can file all of your documents online. It is saving about $150,000 a year in mailouts. You have responded. We get 750,000 filings every year. We're going to have 14,000 new LLCs this year. Over 100,000 LLCs have been filed. No other state is fully electronic, but you are. In June of this year, we will launch the website for our business website. Some of you have gotten letters from me. Others will be getting letters. We ask for MEC support when we're going into that process. It'll be a site that judges the continuing look of how we're progressing through house startups, unemployment claims, interest, LLCs started, where they're started, what kind of entity they are. A site you can go to and judge the pulse of Mississippi business. And we have been developing it for a year. We'll roll it out in June, and we want your input. You'll be getting information from us. This year going forward, you're going to see us promote here what I refer to as an SEC primary. The SEC primary will change the vote to where we elect the President of the United States, whoever he or she may be, by voting on the first Tuesday in March. That's critical because the conventions require you to have Iowa and South Carolina, New Hampshire, Nevada to go before February the 28th. We are joining with other southern states, Georgia, Louisiana, Tennessee, Arkansas, Alabama, to have our primary be the next day. With that change, you will start to see the candidates for the President of the United States start coming through Mississippi, and they should. I want them to come and stand in your door, in your factory, in your business, at your home, and ask what you think is important in running the country. This will elevate us in the presidential election. I got a call from the Washington Post, and they wanted to know, look, are you in this, you're starting this primary, why are you doing that? Why are you doing an SEC primary? Are you trying to preclude somebody from being president of the United States? And I said, I don't think you understand. Mississippi is middle America. We build the rockets to the moon. We build cars. We're an energy exporting state. We have the greatest agriculture in the world here. We are middle America. The President of the United States should come through Mississippi. I'm not going to apologize for Mississippi, and we shouldn't. So beginning this very shortly, I think in the next 90 days, you'll see all kinds of people running through here politicking and hopefully spending a little money. We continue to struggle with the organization of state government. There are 206 moving parts of state governments. They're called agency, boards, and commissions. We have created what you wouldn't create if you were running a lemonade stand with our state government. We have board issues. We have accountability issues. You pick up the paper, you see bad things are happening. Almost in every instance, that flows from the board. How we structure our state government and how we structure the fact that they're accountable to a board that sets policy, and then employees who implement that policy is going to be critical. This year, you'll see some discussions. The governor's taking the lead on that, on how we look at our organization of state government. It has long been overdue. We will come with a policy and with a process that will allow for transparency and accountability, all those good words that you often hear. But more importantly, we need to be able to deliver services in a forthright manner at the least possible cost in a timely manner that you expect. When we started our electronic submission for LLCs and corporations, it used to take 2 weeks to get a corporation done in Mississippi. It takes less than 2 seconds now to get an LLC. That's the kind of things that you demand and businesses demand in Mississippi, and that's what we're going to have to do with state government, and it is going to be a large fight when we get there. Tax cuts will be discussed this year. The governor just spoke about those. Very rarely do you cut your income and then go address your expenses. That's the way state government works, and it just baffles me that they do it that way. They feel like they have to shoehorn in the amount of money you can spend, so therefore we'll have to go cut expenses to make it budget. It's really not the way you run your business. The way you run your business is you minimize your expenses, and that creates the profit difference. There's only 2 levels here, income and expenses. And how we address those in Mississippi in our tax cuts will be very, very important to us. We need to do a process where we have sufficient funding for the things that we need to do as a state government and make sure that it is run properly to be able to provide the minimum amount of expenses that will create the income. And where we have a budget surplus, it ought to be paid back to the taxpayer. The first thing we ought to do after June 30 is add up how much we have left over and pay it back the next April 15th. That way, Mississippians can track what's going on in their government and can track whether they're going to get a dividend or their money back. And that's the way the tax cut structure should be done in our state. I find a great interest to the fact that we're talking about children. It's a critical thing, and MEC has taken the lead where we may not have had the lead before. And when we look at the children's advocacies and the issues that we're being faced for the 2 years and 3 years, 5-year-olds, we find that many Mississippians are faced with autism. Many families are struggling with autism. 1 out of every 68 children born in Mississippi will have autism. Many of those families, and mine is one of them, will be struggling with that issue. Mississippi is only one of 37 states that doesn't cover autism by insurance. We need to. We're delinquent in that particular fashion. Autism, the most effective autism is just exactly what you heard today. The treatment, the ABA treatment between 3 and 5 years old will oftentimes dictate more than 50% of those children can be mainstreamed. put back in the schools, back where the schools can teach them just like we do everyone else, whether it be a governor or your grandchild. It all works the same way. We in Mississippi need to be devoted to making sure that we cover those kinds of things for our children and covering their autism as well. We've got a busy year coming, and it's been, I can't hardly believe y'all hired me 7 years ago to do this. It seems like it's flown by, y'all. But every year we have struggles. I hope sincerely we don't have another Republican primary this year that was like the last one. I'd rather skip that part. Between voter ID and that one, I aged a little bit this last year. But we're by that. Mississippi is moving forward. Every time I see the things that are looking, I see the LLCs that are forming, I see the changes being made in our state, we ought to be very proud of where we're going. Y'all are the leaderships for that, and we're not going to apologize for Mississippi this year. Thanks so much for having me.
You know, we've got a lot to celebrate here in Mississippi, and we had a little event that took place here in the metro area this past fall that's been a part of Mississippi's history for about 40 years, and that is a PGA championship. But there's a real story behind this. This event was struggling. PGA was thinking of moving it to another state, and the governor and some others reached out to a person that's not from the metro area and a person that generally wouldn't be selling his product through golf to see if he might come in and help make this PGA championship more successful. They went to a guy named Joe Sanderson. Joe Sanderson is the CEO of Sanderson Farms, Mississippi's only Fortune 1000 company. It's based in Laurel, Mississippi. And Joe said, we've got to put a national face on Blair E. Batson Hospital. We want to develop the national reputation of this hospital. And so he designated the advertising that would normally have gone to his own company on the Golf Channel, which reached 40 million people around the world. He donated it to Blair E. Batson Hospital, and that was also the charity's chief beneficiary. Now, last year when he took it over kind of at the last minute, he said, let's make sure we really raise some dollars for this charity. And it went from a program that hadn't raised a whole lot in recent years in charitable contributions to $500,000 last year. And this year he said, let's really make a difference. Let's double the goal. And so this year, this week, the Sanderson Farms Championship announced a $1.102 million donation to the Blair E. Batson Hospital for Children. Joe, stand up and take a bow. Joe Sanderson.
We've found in the past year or two that the number one issue on the minds of business and on the minds of businesses that are looking to locate in Mississippi is workforce. You know, there was a time when incentives was the number one issue. They wanted to know what you were going to do, what you were going to give them, how many incentives, how much in incentives were you going to give them in order to come to the state. Now, the number one topic is, do you have a ready, trained workforce for me that can start in my business on day one and then prove that to me? And I think the initiatives that the governor speaks about, as well as the Tech Prep program, that is the Tech Masters program that MEC is doing, is going to go a long way towards making sure that Mississippi has great answers to that question when it comes to, do you have a ready trained workforce? Yes, emphatically, yes, we do.
Where does Mississippi stack up in the competitive environment, not only throughout the South, but through the nation?
Well, we stack up great in the South. Well, of course, the governor's fond of saying we play in the Southeastern Conference. So we're in a pretty competitive part of the United States anyway. The Southeastern Conference, the Southeastern states are hot right now for economic development. And we stack up very, very well with our competitors. We've had great success and have won some very big projects in the past couple of years, beating out our neighbors.
Well, I'm here to support businesses, of course. MEC is a fabulous organization. And for us at the Treasurer's Office, one of our big initiatives is TEAM, the Treasurer's Education About Money. So TEAM is a public-private business corporation partnership to reach out about financial literacy, to talk to the high schools, 9th through 12th grade, about financial literacy, financial education. How do they obtain that skill as they get ready for their next step in life?
What kind of response have you seen so far?
Oh, it's been excellent. We're about 80% funded so far for every high school, public, private, and parochial, to have teacher training and to also have a digital web-based system that they can utilize.
Your reaction to the involvement of MEC in the legislative process?
Oh, MEC is a foundation. They look to MEC for good guidance, good basic information principles that help the legislatures as they go through this process.
Your reaction to MEC's involvement in the legislative process?
We just couldn't do it without them. If you look at the impact they have, particularly on this day, as they come to the Mississippi legislature and tell leaders and members of the Mississippi Senate and House how important business is. We're looking at the franchise tax. If we could slowly do away with that, it would make us more competitive. Again, back to our educational structure, to make sure that we honor young men and women that want to be technicians. You know, we don't want to say everyone must go to a university. If you want to be an honored technician in your high school and in your community college and even in an IHL workforce training program, we want to make sure that you have the opportunity to do that.
Your reaction to everything you've seen here today?
Oh, I get very excited. I can't tell you, without this group, without MEC, Mississippi would be failing. We would not have the success without the effort that Mississippi Economic Council has put forward.
Your reaction to everything you've seen and heard here today?
Oh, this is one of my favorite days of the year. I'm a political junkie, so I love Capitol Day, and it's always great to see a crowd like this here taking part and being part of this process, because this shows our legislative leadership that we have a very engaged business community in the state of Mississippi.
If people have questions like more information, what should they do?
They could call us or either go to MEC.ms, that's our website, just MEC.ms. All of our contact information on there. Give us a call. We'd love to talk to you.